Namaskar. Abuse, trauma, how they happen. There are many different forms of abuse, many different forms of trauma. They can be verbal, they can be physical, they can be emotional. And the verbal and emotional are usually intertied. The physical and emotional are usually intertied. They're all three mixed up together in this mishmash called abuse or trauma. And it gets stuck in our body. Now, as we can see, the verbal trauma is the one that usually has the most impact because it's a big person screaming down at a little person, hey, why aren't you doing what I want you to do? You useless little piece of whatever. I don't know how many times I've talked to people or dealt with people or clients that have talked about how their parents held them responsible. How can you hold a baby responsible? You screwed up my life. My younger son's best friend, his father calls him regularly and tells him how he screwed up his father's life. Well, maybe that drunken or drug-induced time you didn't use the condom, maybe that screwed up your life. If you didn't want the child, why didn't you take responsibility for it to begin with? And children are a lot of responsibility. And then people say, well, they don't come with instruction manuals. Well, if you're following the right spirituality, yeah, they do come with instruction manuals. And you got to treat that child not from your perspective of how you're seeing your logic and your reason. You've got to meet them at their level. So when you're telling that child, or when you have been told as a child, what a useless piece of whatever you are, or hey, why don't you pay attention? You know, I watched a video of this guy, I don't know from where, I hope I never meet the individual. He's trying to teach his baby to stand, and every time the baby would, fall down, he'd punch him in the head. He's punching him right here, which is, where our conscious mind works. So let's just punch you right there and make sure that your conscious mind can't pick up on what I'm trying to teach you. That is an adult who was abused, passing it on. It's called generational abuse. And all forms of abuse turn into trauma, which is held in the body. Most people think post-traumatic stress disorder or chronic post-traumatic stress disorder. Well, I wasn't on the battlefield. But that can come from anything. That can come from just simply the way your parents talked to you in the morning while you were growing up. That can come from the way that your teachers talked to you. That can come from the way your siblings treated you. That can come from the way your grandparents treated you. That can come from all kinds of places. If you were beaten, if you were raped, post-traumatic stress disorder is exactly that. It's the disorder of the body and the nervous system after stress has happened. And we see these forms here showing us the three major forms of abuse or trauma, the three major ways they come in. On the battlefield, it's obvious how that trauma is coming in. But it's also not so obvious that maybe something that those soldiers are required to do that they wouldn't normally do. They see a child coming at them with a hand grenade and the pin's pulled, they would not normally shoot a child. But they got to blow that kid's head off, or that kid's going to blow up them and their buddies. That's pretty traumatic. And I've talked to several soldiers that happened to, from Vietnam, Korea, Grenada, Iraq, Afghanistan. Come on. It happened in World War II. I'm sure it happened in World War I. They call it collateral damage. Well, yeah, when you're the owner of the army and you ain't out there, anything out there is your collateral. So we've got to learn how not to treat our children like our collateral. They aren't our property. They are our responsibility. And we've got to learn to teach them to take responsibility for themselves by showing them how we take responsibility for ourselves. I mean, it's not as difficult as we think. The great master who said, as you treat yourself, treat others. As you love yourself, love others. And he was brilliant. How many people that call themselves good followers of that great master aren't living that today? Now, the effects on you and those around you, whether they be your friends or family, are mood swings. Violent sometimes, but hey, I can be happy all the time. How many people have you known that remind you of that first part there? Happy one instant and then sad the next. Like a switch. And it could have just been the way that the light happened to fall. It could have just been the way that a sound was made, a car backfired. It doesn't make any difference how that happened that caused that mood swing. That happened. And this uncomfort that leads to discomfort leads to addiction. And those addictions are where we're working. It is the medication of the disease that started as an unease. The addiction is not the disease, it is the symptom of the disease. Just as if I go to a doctor with a fever, the fever is not the disease, it is the symptom of the disease. So how do I take the medicine? What medicine do I take? Well, often the medicine that people take is alcohol, pot, tobacco, sex. Those are the ones I used. Heroin, cocaine, methamphetamine, any kind of medicine is medicine, and it makes that feeling go away. It makes that symptom feel better. But just making the symptom feel better does not solve or cure the disease. So how do we do that? Well, we have to get into it. When we go to a heart surgeon, we don't want to sit there and talk to the heart surgeon about what's going on with our heart. We want the heart surgeon to take pictures, do some tests, tell us what's going on, and immediately solve the problem. And that's where us hypno-coaches come in, because we can get below the problem, above the problem, or around the problem, and help the person release their emotional attachment to the problem. These addictions also happen in relationships with people. And how do they negatively affect? Well, if you grew up in a sociopathic situation where everybody was holding you responsible for how they decided to feel, now that's how you've learned to interact with society. Now that's how you've learned to interact with others. Now you're going to hold that person over there, that pretty sexy person you want to spend the rest of your life with, you're going to hold them responsible for how you are deciding to feel. So how you are deciding to feel is now based narcissistically on the external, on that medicine for how you're deciding to feel. And it's not so easy, and I'll tell you, it's not so easy. Well, okay, it's simple, but it ain't easy, because you have to take responsibility for everything you did. You don't attract who and what you want, you attract who and what you are. You attract the mirror so that you see who and what you are. And you may not like who and what you are that you see in the mirror, but you have to accept that. And then you have to look at how you apply that in every way to every person in your life. As you can see, there's all kinds of different people around us. And how are we holding each one responsible? What little facet of each part of our personality are we holding those people responsible for making us feel better? And when they don't, how are we reacting? Because you can react from a pre-built subconscious program, or you can respond, which is to look at the situation. Do I need to be involved? If I need to be involved, do my emotions need to be involved? And if my emotions need to be involved, which emotions need to be involved? So that brings us to the last point. The alienation, trauma bonding, and self-hatred. Addiction always leads to these things. I can't solve it on my own. I need the medicine. I'm made to feel marginalized. I'm made to feel less than because I have an addiction. Now, it's most likely that the person that prescribed this medicine to me was unlicensed and a street vendor, as we call them, street pharmacists. But even if they are a registered medical or health professional, and that's debatable I don't like health professional as a term, medical professional, they may not understand the situation. How does bipolar and manic depression look very similar, but yet they're totally different? Because I can be very suppressed chemically and can't get out of bed, but yet feel very happy and giddy. Yet I can be very manic and very upset and angry at the same time. That's the difference. People put manic depression and bipolar together, and they're two totally different situations. Two totally different situations, and they can exhibit themselves in anyone. Depression is looking backwards. Suppression is what most people experience chemically, because on a daily basis they're going into their programs. I know that personally, every single day I have to look myself in the eye, I have to pull my attention to where I want it to be, and I'm constantly talking to ego and saying, hey, this is where I want my attention. I want my attention on this step and how my foot is falling. I want my attention on this breath in my meditation. I want my attention on this video and how I'm shooting it. I want my attention on how I'm planning it, what I'm doing. I am preaching from a point of, this is what I'm doing. I know it is working for me. I know it has worked for countless others. Ancient and modern techniques are blending. Science is proving that these methods work, and it's all done by repetition. There aren't that many rules of the mind, and most of them match the actual universal rules we're dealing with. However, breaking the cycle, that's the difficult part. And then once you break the cycle, once you beat that big bad boss, hey, guess what? Now you're on the next level. Now you've peeled another level of the onion. Now you've found another place. How long do you go through the artichoke before you find the heart? And once you do find the heart, it's this little bitty thing in the middle. And now you've got another artichoke. If you want to keep eating artichokes, onion. How many layers are there to an onion? How many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Roll Pop? A lot. And you keep going, and you keep going, and you keep going. And it's a daily task. It's a daily deal. It's something you do every moment, moment to moment. Living in this world, but not being of it. Mind comes externally from the infinite spiritual being that we are, comes into this antenna and fills this nice little vehicle we live in, to the point where we become to believe that this is our world. And that old statement, be in the world but not of it. Don't let this thing's passions rob you of the experience of living well. Be happy. If you decide to be offended, that's your opinion, but it's not necessarily the reality of the situation. And remember, your two eyes don't even see the same thing. They don't even agree. So when you're dealing with addiction, when you're dealing with trauma, when you're dealing with abuse, you must end that cycle. You must cut that cycle off. We have what we call no contact. That is very difficult to do if you are involved in a marriage or a live-in situation. When you are involved in just a simple dating situation, well, hey, blocking and eliminating them from completely in any social way, that happens. I'm very grateful that my last relationship was a long-distance relationship, because going no contact was not a problem. Hey, I'm nearly 600 miles away. I ain't got no problems with cutting you off. Chunk. But it was still very painful. And going within on a daily basis and dealing with these things on a daily basis, it takes bravery. People have told me, well, man, you're going where angels fear to tread. And I'm here to tell you that Mikey and Gabe, they both tell me, they ain't no place they're afraid to go. So if they're not afraid to go there, why should I be afraid to go there? I essentially am an infinite spiritual being having a temporary human experience, and I'm working to enjoy it to the best of my ability. Now, those hazy decades where I thought I was enjoying myself, where people told me either I was enjoying myself or I wasn't, well, that was great for that particular time. But now I can take those hazy decades and use them as the fuel for the creativity to be able to bring things to people, to be able to help you. Liking and subscribing, talking to me in the comments, letting me know what you would like to see, letting me know how I can help you. Contact me, Hawk, at helpahawkhealing.com, and we can schedule a discovery call so that we can talk about how I can teach you how to teach yourself how to let these things go. You know, you can awaken and not ascend. Just because your eyes are open doesn't mean that you're ascending unless you're climbing the stairs every single day, taking another step, a millimeter or a mile. Progress every day. There we go. Hello, Red Tail. Yes, you give me my name, and thank you for dancing above me. So, in conclusion, how does trauma and abuse happen? By experience. Thank you, and namaskar.